Welcome to Montreal Rocks. You know the songs Carry On, Wayward Son, Dust in the Wind, Point of No Return, but there's a story you might not know. Our next guest spent years driving a truck around Chicago before he ever sang a Kansas song. Now he's fronting one of the great American prog rock bands, and they're bringing the show to Place Bell on August 17th with Deep Purple. Ronnie Platt, welcome to the show.
Randall, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Oh, first of all, I was listening to some of your newer stuff, and it blew me away. Like
Thank you.
I think many people that might not know you, the band Kansas, especially the newer viewers, might not realize just how much of a prog band and the evolution of the band has come. So I can't wait to talk about all those things. My typical way of starting these conversations is I want to go back in time and get your hero story, your origin story. Every superhero has an origin story. So, normally our musical taste starts with our parents. They have stuff listening
Right.
that we listen in the
Yeah.
background, but at one point in time, there's a musical genre, a song, a band that just hits us differently where we go, this is my music. What was that for you?
Gosh, I have to go back really when I was very, very young because my entire family was musical. Uh, both my grandparents on both sides all played piano. My grandmother on my mother's side was an incredible piano player, would play the ragtime stuff, and just she couldn't tell you a note on the piano, but could play anything for you. And, down in the basement of my grandparents' house, they had this beautiful high top piano that the kids, always banged on. And I always was it was either go downstairs and play pool or play piano. That was your choice back then. There was no internet back then. And it just music just seemed like such a normal thing in my family, always being surrounded by it. Then being in grade school, uh, you know, joining band, and for some reason, I was attracted to the trombone, and I
Okay.
wanted to play the trombone. And my sister is 4 years older than me, uh, and I think she really liked the band Chicago, and she had a lot of Chicago albums, and was playing Chicago. Then I might have seen them on TV or something, and it's like, wow, that brass section is so cool. And in grade school, when they approached you about joining band, everybody wanted to play the drums.
Mhm.
It was drums, or there were a lot of guys that played trumpet. For some reason, I wanted to play something different. I went for trombone, played trombone for a while in the school band, but then my sister one day uh, brought home an acoustic guitar, and I confiscated it from her probably about a week later and never gave it back, and had a easy chord Beatles book, all the
Yeah.
the simple guitar chords, open chords for the Beatles songs.
Like the four
And I
chords that
just
we are the basic
yeah,
three
it
songs.
was, and just that just got the ball rolling. Then in seventh and eighth grade, being in the school band, I actually played guitar. And then getting into high school, uh, you know, becoming friends with guys that were just in love with music, and starting my first band. And I was playing bass at that point. Another story. One of the guys, my
Is
sister
this a
was.
Yezda Urfa? Or
Oh
is
my
that
gosh, that's much later.
okay? So this is
That
even
that's
pre.
much
Okay.
much later. And but a friend of my sister's one time, he's watching me play guitar, and he goes, "You would be a good bass player." A week later, I had a bass guitar, and then that I always considered myself like a closet bass player, because I at home I have just as many basses as I have guitars. So, and it just seemed to cascade from there. Uh, and nobody sang. Uh, so I started actually singing in bands in freshman, sophomore year of high school by default because no one else would sing. Then after high school, I was working a factory job, and one of my fellow workers came up to me and he said, "Hey, I know this band. They're looking for a singer, and I know you play bass and sing, but did you ever think of just singing?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'll give it a shot." And Randall, what is really ironic about at that point in time, it was my first bar jobbing band. And
Okay.
ironically, we were named Lazy after the Deep Purple song,
Hmm.
Lazy. And the guitar player, who was a child prodigy, virtuoso guitar player, his name was Steve Walsh. How how crazy can this get? And it gets crazier through the years.
Is it the
Uh,
Steve Walsh
but
or a Steve Walsh?
not the a Steve Walsh,
Okay.
not the Steve Walsh from Kansas, but Steve Walsh from Western Springs,
Things were
Illinois.
aligning.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Uh, but that started me exclusively singing. But then as I got into other bands and stuff, I started singing, playing guitar, playing bass, playing keyboards. There was always a keyboard at home, my grandparents' house, and uh, growing up in Bellwood, we had an organ in the front room, so always playing with that. But it's something when I think about all the music I listened to, and growing up just outside of Chicago, listening to stations like WLS, WCFL, AM stations back then,
Yeah.
it 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 wasn't so streamlined as it was today, as it is today. You have so many satellite stations that play one genre, very
Niche.
small selection of music. Whereas growing up, I remember just like hanging out in my backyard in Bellwood and having the radio playing, and WLS, WCFL, they would play they'd play a Deep Purple song, and then the next song would be the Jackson Five. It was that diverse, and that really exposed
Well, they
me.
wore Deep Purple maybe in their outfits, so there is a
Yeah, right, right. That's the connection. But
yeah.
it really was listening to such a wide span of music. But as I got more and more involved, uh, I just started to lean towards progressive music. The Yes album came out in what, 1972? And I remember hearing, Roundabout on the radio, and that was just such a cool song to me.
I
Then,
just interviewed Jeff Towns from Yes.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. But that just really grabbed me. And then, of course, when Wayward Son came out, you couldn't not turn on a radio and not hear Wayward Son. It was on the radio constantly. So that introduced me to Kansas because that was such uh, a cool song. And I think I bought the Kansas album, Left Overture, played it to death, went back and bought all the previous albums. And then, of course, Point of No Return came out, and that was 77. So that was right when I was in high school. Uh, and I became a huge Rush fan, because I love the bass guitar. So it was just like all this progressive music just is what I gravitated to. Uh, and it's funny. I kind of joke about how in the '80s I kind of missed the boat with all the hair band. You know, the Bon Jovi and the Motley Crue. I had no attraction to that. I was such a hardcore progressive. The Kansas, yes, Genesis, Rush.
The
Those were
stuff
my
that
bands.
lived
So
on because the hair
yeah,
bands kind of where are they now? Most of them.
right, right. And you think about that music from the '70s, of how that music is just sustained through the years. and it I see it myself that, and it's so heartwarming to me to see teenage kids in the audience, getting into Kansas music, and they're not just sitting there going, "Gee, when are they going to play Wayward Son?" And
Yeah.
they're actually into the whole show. And but the other tribute to that is the band right now is on fire. The players in this band are just, I call it the all-star team of rock and roll, with the resume of everyone in the band. I mean, Eric Holmquist on the drums. He was Phil's drum roadie for almost 20 years. So he's sitting, and I was actually in a band with Eric's father, playing Yes music for 3 years. We played Yes music. So Eric, I've known him since he was 5 years old. And of course, he's a chip off the old block. His father was a phenomenal drummer, and he's a phenomenal drummer. And he just seamlessly, took over for Phil when Phil's, semi-retired. So, he's killing on the drums. And you've got Zach Risby on guitar, who's worked with Kansas for years, doing behind the scenes stuff. And Zach is the major writer in the last two albums, the Prelude, Implicit, in the absence of presence. Zach was the major writer of those songs. Throwing Mountains, what a killer tune. Zach wrote that. And it's all in the vein of Kansas. Joe Denenzone on the violin, just amazing to watch. He'll mesmerize you. Dan McGowan on the bass, and handling the second lead vocal duties. Dan has the voice of an angel. Uh, Tom Brislin, I don't know if you're familiar with Tom's resume. Tom was Meatloaf's keyboard player.
Okay.
He was Debbie Harry's keyboard player, and he toured with Yes. So you're no slouch if you've got that under your belt. Then, of course, the latest addition to the band is Scott Bernard, who was Kenny Loggins' guitar player for 18 years. I mean, when you look at the resume of the people who are in this band, it just says all-star team.
Yeah.
And that's really it. But I'm digressing here, getting away from my evolution of just being attracted to progressive music, and look at where it brought me.
I do want to talk about writing. I mean, after Shooting Star, after Yezda Urfa, which, by the way, Progheads still talk about that era and those re-releases.
Yeah,
Probably you haven't heard of it. Check it out. But I'm sure you took some of that scene, that prog that was in you, and you brought
yeah,
that into Kansas. And you basically you've written some lyrics on one of the latest records, Refugee, Camouflage, Unsung Heroes.
yeah.
What sparked one of those? When it maybe did the band say, "Hey, you can write," or did you just offer it up? How did it start?
Randall, this is where I say I've won the lottery 3 times in a row. Not only getting the job as lead singer of Kansas, but then finding out that I'm going to be singing on a studio album. You know, that's award number two. But then to be asked to write lyrics was just, I mean, beyond my wildest dreams. And when we started working on the Prelude Implicit, I'm talking to Phil, and Phil asked me, do you write? And I said, yeah, I've always written. And he said, well, give it a shot. And the first song I submitted to Phil and Rich was With This Heart. And in this business, you have to be thick-skinned. You cannot be thin-skinned in this business, or you're
Yeah.
not going to last. So I've had many, many disappointments when it comes to the music business. So I wrote With This Heart with, I'm like, okay, I'm going to submit this to Phil and Rich, see if they like it. But I was all expecting them to say, hey, this is great. We appreciate your effort, but we have this professional writer from Nashville. We're going to go with him. I was all prepared. I was preparing myself for, a letdown,
Yeah.
and you know, when I submitted that song and, Rich and Phil are like, oh my God, this is great. We'll use this. Write the next one. I'm like shell shocked. I'm like, really? And one led to another. And I ended up writing six of the songs on Prelude Implicit, co-writing two more with Billy Greer, and then also writing songs for The Absence of Presence. Uh, I really call Circus of Illusion is one of the ones I'm most proud of, along with Unsung Heroes. We just uh, really amazing to think that I've been able to achieve that and become part of the writing team of Kansas when you think I'm grouped with Terry Livgren as a lyricist. It's just beyond my wildest dreams.
And of course, you talked about the lineup, uh, the current touring lineup, and a lot of it's changed because of health issues. You had your own health scare with thyroid cancer last year. How are you feeling now?
I feel fantastic, and it really feels like at this point just like a bump in the road. Uh, it, it's sobering to sit in your doctor's office and you know uh, give you a little inside story. When I went to my ENT, he took a needle biopsy of my nodule, and a week later, I was back in his office, and he gave me this sheet of paper, and it looked like it was printed out on a printer that was running out of ink. It's like I could barely read it, and there were six different divisions, one being benign and six being fully malignant. And I really didn't understand what he was giving me. And, I'm like, Doc, you want to explain this to me? What am I? And he goes, well, you're a six. And, the world stops. It's something to be sitting there and have your doctor tell you you have full-blown malignant thyroid cancer. And
It
it's
rearranges your priorities, doesn't it?
oh my God, the first thing that came to my mind was, how much time do I have? And do I have 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years? Is this going to kill me? You know, uh, but
It did not. It did not.
it didn't. It didn't. And I think the craziest thing about this is trying to find a doctor. My ENT asked me if I wanted a second opinion. Thank God I said yes. And I started researching doctors, and it became so stressful, and then dealing with insurance and just, I mean, it was really, the stress became almost as bad as the cancer itself. That's how stressed out I was. And this is such a crazy story. Everyone, I have a friend who's an oral surgeon, and my former girlfriend works for an oral surgeon that we're still very close. And very good friend of mine, Paul, both his daughters are doctors, and they were all coming back to me saying, this Dr. Angelos is the guy that you need to see. And I'm like, okay, how do I get in touch with this guy? And this is such a freaky story. I finally announced on Facebook, because the band was canceling shows. Uh, there had to be a reason. So I went on Facebook and, announced what I was going through. And that was a Thursday. The very next day, I get a phone call from a former guitar player, friend of mine, former guitar player that I was in a couple of bands with. And he's giving me the business. He goes, it really sucks that I got to find out my brother has cancer through Facebook. He's really giving me the
Yeah.
business. And he's like, and I'm sorry, I can't tell the story without getting choked up. And he's like, tell me what's going on with you. And I'm like, oh my God, told him about going to the doctor, and I'm trying to get in to see this Dr. Angelo, the surgeon who's supposed to be the best in the country. And it's so frustrating, insurance and this and that. And he says to me, hold on a second, Ronnie. And he says, Mary, come here. And introduces me over the phone, says, this is my girlfriend, Mary. I've been seeing her for about a year, blah, blah, blah. And I start telling her the story. And Mary goes, Ronnie, I work with Dr. Angelos. I see him every day.
It's insane.
What? What? There's what, 12, 13, 14 million people in the Chicagoland area. And my guitar player's girlfriend happens to work with the surgeon I need to see. And not only does she work and see Dr. Angelos every day, she has the authority to go into the hospital and move me up in the schedule. What? Where I was originally, I finally made an appointment with Dr. Angelos, and I wasn't supposed to see him for like 2 months. And Mary moves me up to next week. What? Really? And things were put into play even before I realized it. If I would have had to do it on my own, I probably wouldn't have been able to have my surgery until months and months later. And here, in a matter of a couple weeks, I had my surgery scheduled, and 1 month to the day of my surgery, I was back on stage with Kansas. 1 month. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I'm so glad to hear it.
It's so funny now to how many shows have I done since then? And it just seems like such a small fraction of time.
But it slows down
And
during that time, I'm sure.
it does, but now it seems like something that is so far behind me. Thank God, I'm healthy. I feel great, and just boy, uh, I really scored in the luck department. Not only musically but health wise. And there's not a day that goes by uh, I don't thank everyone for it.
We probably don't have time for this, but it might have originated from a birthmark, right?
That's the crazy thing is my ENT, uh, when he gave me my diagnosis, he said, "Did you ever have radiation therapy?" And I had to think, and I'm like, when did I have? And it occurred to me when I was like, my mother told me I was like not even 2 years old. I was born with a birthmark on the tip of my nose. My mother, my grandmother didn't want me going through life looking like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right? So it was when I was like 2 years old.
Hey, you could have been
I
in
had that.
Kiss. They have it could have been the
Right,
cat in
right,
Kiss.
right. I could have been the drummer, right? But it was so funny that I realized I'm like, oh my God, when I was like less than 2 years old, I had that birthmark removed with radiation. I'm sure radiation therapy was perfectly safe in
Yeah,
1964.
back when doctors are smoking.
Oh my God, yes. My doctor smokes Marlboros. Anyway, but my ENT said your cancer is a direct result of that radiation therapy. Crazy, crazy. So, but like I said,
Yeah.
I mean, I got through it. It's all great. And to move things forward, uh, the band is doing great. I'm happy to be here. And it just seems like this band just seems to jump the hurdles and pick up momentum. And the band is just doing absolutely fantastic.
And speaking of momentum, your songs are getting momentum too. They're turning up everywhere lately. Carry On Wayward Son is in the new season of Reacher. Um, the band had a
Yeah.
cameo in Walker a few years back. Does that change a song for you, hearing it like in a completely different context?
It's so strange to watch that episode of Walker, and they're talking about seeing Kansas and stuff, but that uh, in the Reacher, but also Supernatural that kind of unofficially adopted Wayward Son as a theme song, and it just introduced the music to a younger generation. And like I said, to me, it's so rewarding to see not only the kids of the original fans, but now the grandkids of the original fans coming to see this band and just absorbing the music and enjoying it and really being fulfilled by the music of Kansas.
Well, Ronnie, I've really enjoyed talking with you. I normally try to sneak in a little fantasy rock band before the end, but I don't think we'll have time where you pick your favorite. You got to create a band with a singer, guitarist, drummer, completely fictional. Uh, but maybe I'll text you. You can send me the answers after. All
Oh, text me and I will study for the test.
right. So you're coming to Place Belle on August 17th. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. You're coming to Place Belle on August 17th with Jefferson, Starship, Deep Purple. These are bands that we would have listened to on the radio as kids, and now you're on stage with
Absolutely.
them. Can't wait. Uh, Unfortunately, I'll be out of town. It's killing me, but I won't even be around. I can't even make Ottawa.
Acceptable.
I'll figure something out. Anyway, thank you so much, Ronnie, for being on the show, and I look forward to eventually seeing you up on stage singing your little heart out.
Please do. Thank you so much.